Hello, welcome to the work along for Chapter 5. Chapter 5 deals with loops. We will look at various loops, while loops, for loops in the book, nesting loops. Actually, our program for today, the work along today, will be working with a nested loop. So let's get into what we need to do for our program. Today we're going to write a program that inputs a right triangle. We're going to give it a special symbol. We're going to give it how high we want the right triangle to be. And then from there, it's going to draw a right triangle for us based on a couple of loops. I have two different versions of this program. So we'll look at the version publisher decided to show us, and then I will look and show you a different version of how this works. As far as what our program looks like, here's our flow chart for our program. As you can see, we start up in here. We're going to start with our start button. We're going to ask to set up some variables. Our variables are going to be both the how high the triangle should be and what special character we want. So we're going to enter the special character, and then we're going to enter our loop count. So how high is it going to be using what special character? And here's where it gets a little funky is we make a decision. This is our decision area right here. Our decision here is going to take and ask us to put in what is our height? Does our height meet the number that we put in there? If it is, then if it's less than that height, then we're going to come down here and we're going to ask for another decision, and that other decision is going to be based on this J value, saying is J less than I. This is our inner loop. If we say that's true, then we are going to come down here and we're going to print our special character. And then we're going to increment. You can see on the bottom we do an increment of J, and here's where our loop function comes in, is right here. We come back around and then we ask to see a test again, is J less than I? This section right here is going to then do that test again. As long as J is less than I, we're going to print our special character, we're going to increment, and of course loop back around. Once J is not less than I, we come back up here, we increment I, we test I to see if it's meeting our height requirement. If I is less than our height requirement, we come back and we come and do our J loop all over again. If I is greater than or equal to our height requirement, then we end our program. So that's the basic layout of what our program is going to do and how we're going to create it or write it. So in Eclipse, let's start off with our new program. So File, New, and then Chap5 Project, and of course we'll give it the name Chapter 5 Work Along. And we want to make sure we have the correct interpreter and that we create our SRC folder. Go ahead and click Finish. Then in our project on the left hand side, open it up, right click on the SRC folder, go to New, and this time we're going to pick Chap5 module. Of course, give it the name Chapter 5 Work Along, and click Finish, and this will start our program for us. Create our doc string. After we click OK, come through here, and let's start off by creating our variables. So we'll start off with a comment saying # set variable sentinel. So we're going to set a variable sentinel for this, and what that is that's going to be when we decide to come out of our loop. Okay? And our variable sentinel, we're going to say again, asking if we want to run our program again, and we're going to set that value to true. Make sure you use a capital T for true. In Python, capital T is the appropriate Boolean value. And then we're going to do another comment here and then we'll say we're going to run the outer loop. There's no, like I showed you before, in our diagram we have two different loops. We have our inner loop here where we're testing j versus I, and we have our outer loop where we're testing I versus the height that we enter. So we're going to do our outer loop, and then the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do while. That is our keyword for a while loop, and we're going to say while again, colon. Remember, we set again to true, so this makes an infinite loop until we decide to break out of this. So put our colon in there, hit enter. Our next comment is going to be input special char and set height. So we're going to set the height of our loop. We're going to set the special char we want. So we'll go triangle underscore char, and that is going to equal an input, opening paren, double quote, enter a character, colon, space, double quote, closing paren. That is going to be what's going to be printed out on the screen. Next, we're going to ask for the height. So we'll go triangle underscore height, and that is going to equal an integer, so we have to cast it as an integer. So int, opening paren, input, opening paren, double quote, enter, triangle, height, colon, space, double quote, closing paren, closing paren. So those are our two input lines. Then we're going to throw a print line in there, open and closing paren, just to add a space. Now let's put in another pound sign, and we're going to say draw right triangle. And this is going to first set our I value. Remember from our diagram we had an I value. Set our I value to 0 so that we can start our loop. And then here's where we start our first version of our inner loop. So version 1, let's make sure we put a pound sign before that. Version 1, just to identify that comment. And this is going to be our first inner loop. While I is less than triangle height. Since triangle height is our integer, we are going to run this inner loop. The outer loop, the one that just says again that we have here on line 11, is going to be our do you want to run this code again loop. So it's going to test, it's going to ask us if we want to do this again, if we want to run this triangle again. So we have our inner loop, and then we're going to say j equals 0 inside of our inner loop, and then we're going to go while j is less than or equal to I. We're testing j and seeing if it's less than or equal to I. This statement has to be true to come into our inner loop, our inner loop. This is a loop inside of a loop, which is inside of a loop. And then if that is true, we're going to go print, opening paren, triangle, char, comma, end equals single quote space single quote. Remember I said that single and double quotes are pretty interchangeable. Every once in a while I do change those out. So print, opening paren, triangle, underscore char. This error here, if you hover over it, it gives you a syntax error. Don't worry about that. There's a bug in the PyDev code that because we use the end equals symbol there or code there, it gives us an error, but it'll still run perfectly fine. Then we say j equals j plus 1. This is where we increment j so that at some point we will break out of this while loop on line 23 so that we can then come up to and increment our first inner loop for the I is less than triangle height. So hit enter and let's backspace so that we now line up with our while loop while j is less than or equal to I. And here we're going to put a print statement, open and closing paren, just to add an extra line. And then we're going to say I equals I plus 1. This is our increment for our while I is less than height. At some point we want to break out of that loop, and we won't be able to do that unless we increment I to then at some point be equal to the triangle height. So we hit enter twice and then backspace because now I want to line up with my while I is less than triangle height. Now here's my second version. So # version 2, and this is just going to be a for loop. We've used a while loop, now we're going to do a for loop. For count in range, opening paren, triangle height, closing paren, colon. This is much simpler than the one we had above, and then all we're going to do is we're going to put in there a print, opening paren, 2 opening parens, and we're going to go triangle, char, plus double quote space double quote, closing paren, and then we're going to use the times opening paren count plus 1, closing paren, closing paren. So what's this line doing? This line is saying print the special char with a space, and this is going to multiply that by however many times we have our count, plus 1. If we put in 5 for our triangle height, count the first time through this, the first iteration of this for loop is going to be 0. So we want to say multiply our special character and the space times 1, because we want to add the 1 in there, because times 0, it's not going to put anything in there. Then we're going to come up and we're going to grab the next number, which would be 1, assign that to count, and then we're going to print our triangle special character plus the space 2 times, because it will be 1 plus 1, and that will then create two characters in there. And then from there, press enter a couple of times and now line up with our for loop. That's all we have to do with that for loop, as opposed to what we did above with the line 21 through line 27. There are 2 different versions. Both of them have their uses. You could sometimes simplify it like we did on line 30 and 31. Sometimes you need to have the nested loops like we did above from line 21 to 27. Then I'm going to put a print statement in. Make sure you're lined up with the F in the for loop. Open and closing paren just to create a space. And now I'm going to do my last # ask if user wants to retry. This is going to be for our farthest outer loop, the while true loop, way up here on line 11. We're asking the user if they want to do this over again, which means put another special character in, put a different height in. And I'm going to call this variable yn for yes, no. I'm going to say equals, and then we'll go input, opening paren, and then just ask them, would you like to run again? Question mark, space, double quote. Make sure you put your double quotes around your string inside of your input parens, and then we're going to ask them a question. We're going to do a decision. So we're going to say if yn equals equals. Remember, two equal signs means compare. Doesn't mean assign. One equal sign is for assigning, like line 27 on the screen. Two equal signs means that we're going to test it. So we're going to say if yn equals equals double quote lowercase no double quote. That's one test. And then we're going to have another test. We're going to do an or. So we're going to ask them if it's lowercase no or if it's uppercase no. So now I'm going to say capital YN equals equals double quote capital N lowercase o. So I'm testing two things. I'm saying if it's lowercase no or if it's capitalized no, then we're deciding that they do not want to try it again, and then we exit out, which means that I need to set my again value to equal false. Once I set my again value to false, I can save my program, excuse me, and I can run it. So let's go ahead and right click in the white space and say that we want to run as Python run, check for any errors, put my special character in. I'm going to throw in an @ sign, and I'm going to say I want to do this 5 times. And I hit enter, and I should see two triangles. The top triangle here is from my top set of loops, my while loops that we did up here from line 21 to line 28, 27, and this is creating this while loop here. The bottom loop is being created by line 30 and 31. So this set of triangles here is being created by that lower set, or the for loop on line 30 and 31. And then it comes and asks us, would you like to run again? If I say yes, I can run that again. I can enter another special character, %sign this time, and I'm going to say 3 for my triangle height. I spelled triangle wrong, but I'll fix that. And now I can look at it and I can go, I see my first triangle here, and then I see my second triangle here. Now it asks me again, do you want to do it again? And I can put in no in either way. I can do lowercase no, or I can do a capitalized no, and it will then exit my code. I will make my few typo corrections, and that's about it for this video. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I look forward to seeing you in Chapter 6. Thank you.